Hello, my name is John Reynolds. On this episode of Extraordinary Life Stories, I'm talking with SpaceTech investor and trailblazer Mark Boggett. Mark is an entrepreneurial pioneer in space tech investment, having co-founded Seraphim Space, a leading venture capital firm focused on investing in space technology startups. I think at some point every young lad dreams of being in space. Is the reality of living in space close to a reality? I want to know how Mark got into this space, excuse the pun, and what advice would he give an aspiring entrepreneur entering the space tech industry? Let's find out. Can't wait to talk with Mark. Mark, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me along today.
Thank you for joining me. Tell me, who is Mark Boggett?
So I have become, over the last decade, the #1 investor in the space market globally.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's a privileged position to be in,
Yeah.
but I work very hard to stay in that position.
Well done. Well, take me back to what a young Mark wanted to be when you were growing up.
So I was very lucky because I was very clear about what I wanted to be from an early age. And I think that's a huge advantage as you're going through school.
Yeah.
I can even pinpoint where I determined what I wanted to be, which is watching the film Wall Street, and I wanted to work on Wall Street. So
How old are you at this point?
So I would have been in my early teens. So maybe 12, 13, that sort of age.
A brilliant time to know what you want to do.
Yeah. So I watched the film recently, actually. It's not a great film, but
No,
it certainly
inspired you.
inspired me to go down a particular path.
Yeah.
And it was just very clear to me, that's what I wanted to do. So all of the things that I did at school and afterwards sort of all aligned with that goal.
Now, interesting, because we already know what you do, and you're inspired to go into finance and trading.
Yes.
But that's not what you do now. So
No.
Tell me how that got joined up.
So I went through university and then got the job in stockbroking exactly as I wanted to do, and thoroughly enjoyed that role. That's really where I was introduced to the analytics side of analysing companies, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And really at the time, so this was in the 90s, tech was really only a small part of the overall stock market. So they used to put the new guys on tech, because these were sort of ever-changing companies that those that were sort of long in the tooth in the market didn't really want to learn about. They were quite happy to focus on retail or oil and gas or mining and things that they really knew. And the tech was sort of changing so frequently that it was hard work. So they put all the new guys in that area. So I was sort of immersed in technology straight away. So I then moved into investing into technology as opposed to just analysing, and again in stocks. And at this time, it was largely focused around IPOs, which were largely US technology IPOs.
Sure.
So it was a really exciting time in the market. This is the late 90s, and pretty much everything was going up.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what you invested in, but I still felt that we were doing things really well because things were going so well. And one of the things that I sort of became aware of as a consequence of this was the other people on the other side of the table, which were the management teams and the venture capitalists that backed them, that were effectively selling their shares to me. So it was only at that time that I became aware of this other area that you could get involved with in technology. So the stock market then crashed. Mm-hmm. And actually, we got the stock market timing quite well. We knew the crash was coming. We sold out of most of our positions, but we bought back in too early. So we had to sort of maintain that position for some time, which meant I was sort of sat around on my hands, not really doing very much. And that's when I really started to look into venture capital, these guys on the other side of the table.
Sure.
And quickly realized that actually that was much more interesting. And it was interesting because as a public market investor, you look at publicly available information and then you invest into the company. You rarely go and see the company. And actually, in most cases, unless you're investing in an IPO, you're not investing in the company. You're actually buying somebody else's shares that doesn't want them anymore. So you're buying and selling share prices. You're not investing into companies. And that really dawned on me one day, and I didn't like it. But what I did like was the fact that there was another role where, as a venture capitalist, you would invest into a company, but you would then join the board of the company and become part of the story of the success of that company. and that was really very attractive to me.
Mm.
So I decided to make the move and go into this market. But the problem was, it's very difficult to do that.
Yeah, and it's incredibly innovative.
Yeah,
and high risk, I assume.
it
in
was.
different contexts.
It was. So I did something quite unusual in order to make the transition. I went and looked at all the companies that I wanted to work for, and decided the one that fit best. And then went to see them. Bearing in mind, I was relatively senior in my role,
Sure.
and relatively successful. I was probably 7 years into the role, and I offered to work at the organisation for free for 6 months, so that they could have the benefit of my analytical experience.
Yeah, and you got a deep dive in for research.
I could do what I wanted to do, and sort of effectively buy myself into a role. So and then sort of if you just sort of fast forward, how many years later? Sort of 7 years later, I was on the main board director of that company. Actually, managing that company myself. So it was the right move, but it was a risky move. But there really isn't a relationship between being an analyst and an investor in quoted companies to being a venture capitalist. Although it sounds like they're the same thing, they're really very, very different. Okay. And this was the reason why, there wasn't a huge amount of weight put on my sort of experience of backing technology stocks to coming over the fence and joining on the venture capital side.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So actually, that was really entrepreneurial of you in a almost a sort of very senior corporate environment, but you were actually making these decisions to learn. To better yourself, to be in a position where actually at this point you're probably the most experienced in your field, wouldn't you say?
Well, at the point that I made that decision
sitting here now. So those decisions you've made to then ratchet forward to the fact that you are the biggest investor in that SpaceTech.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got that experience, but you haven't come through just sitting on boards and watching other people. You've been deep diving. You've
That's
been
right.
Actually getting that experience.
I see myself as an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur, and I work with other entrepreneurs in the area that interests me, which is space.
Yeah, but that keeps you innovative. That keeps you. So I'm interested now because, in terms of facing forwards and where the space tech investment is going and the future of space, you must have incredible insight into that and be and seeking out what does that look like?
Not only insight into this. This is one of the most exciting things. So we have a board of that's made up of some of the people who are the most eminent players in the space market globally. We meet once or twice a year to look over the horizon at what is going to be happening in sort of more than a decade's time, to try and sort of reach some sort of agreement on where this is all going to.
Yeah.
But then we decide on the things that are important in a decade's time, and then work backwards to say, if that's going to become a reality of the future, what do we need to invest into today in order to enable that to happen?
Yeah.
So not only are we sort of out there looking for cool things to invest into, we're sort of making the future happen by being the sort of financier that's prepared to take the risk to support those companies. Yeah.
So what does the future look like in 10 years' time?
So it's pretty exciting. I think I might answer that question in a slightly different way, which is to sort of build up to the answer to that question, because one of the things about space is that this is a long-term evolving market, but that's accelerating very, very quickly. So where we are today in relation to space is that I'm sure everyone's aware of Elon Musk and the incredible things that he's been doing with SpaceX. But what he's effectively done by creating a reusable rocket is he's lowered the cost to access to space by 100x. So that's opened it up for entrepreneurs to think, well, what comes next?
Sure.
What do you do with this sort of cheap fare into space? So that's led to entrepreneurs creating satellites that are effectively using the components from a mobile phone to put together these tiny satellites that are incredibly capable, but they're really small and don't cost a lot. So, some of these companies have got satellites that are literally the size of a shoebox. In fact, my first investment there made in space has got more than 150 of those in space today. And, these have got the capability of satellites that previously would have been the size of a bus and cost $1 billion.
Yes.
So it's incredible how this has happened so quickly and the capability that you can fit into something of this size.
Yeah.
But when you just think about a mobile phone and the supercomputer in your pocket, it's not that amazing, but it is in terms of what that's going to do from space. So smaller, lighter, cheaper satellites, cheap access to space enables you to be able to build up a large constellation of satellites,
Yes.
measured in hundreds of thousands of them, if not millions. And ultimately what that's doing in aggregate is creating a digital infrastructure around planet Earth, where each of these satellites is looking down and either communicating or gathering information. And because there's so many of them, it's close to real time. Now, they all use different types of data and different types of sensors to gather this information in different ways. And then this creates a huge data set that you then apply artificial intelligence to.
I was just going to ask you that.
In order to help understand what is going on.
And that must have fast-tracked the growth now massively. Your conversations pre-AI 2 years ago, you're probably ahead of the curve, maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Must have the trajectory and how far you can get now must have sped up so much.
The whole thing is going faster than anybody expected. So to go back to the story, the phase of space where we are right now is about creating this digital infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
We're about 20% of the way through that activity at the moment, so there's still way to go.
Sure.
And really, it's about using that data to make the world a safer place. You can monitor what's going on, which is an audit of everything that's going on. So that means that you can use resources more efficiently.
Yes.
You can also hold bad actors to account. So those that are doing illegal fishing or chopping down rainforests or fly tipping, there is now a data set that's going to hold those parties to account because it can be used in a court of law. So this is about a data set that's actually going to make the world safer, more efficient. And of course, there's billions of dollars of money to be made on the back of this as well, which is where I'm very much focused. It always comes back to the making of the money, but at the same time, this is a world change that's underway.
It's making a positive social impact.
It is very much so. It is.
Brilliant.
Defence, climate and sustainability, smart cities, autonomous transport, the Internet of Things, food security. These are the big themes that it's driving. But if you then look below that, you've got all of the different industries: oil and gas, insurance, maritime, real estate. There really isn't a sector that isn't going to be impacted by this. One of the ways that I try and help people sort of get it is everyone's familiar with GPS and the blue dot in your mobile phone. I certainly used it to get here today for this recording, but it's also used by virtually every industry. They've adopted this technology in different ways. It's every time you go and draw some money out of an ATM machine, it's using GPS. Every transaction that's done on the stock market uses GPS for the time stamping. So it has time, it has longitude, it has latitude, 3 pieces of information. Those 3 pieces of information have created billions of dollars of enterprise value every year. It's taken about 30 years to get to that position. What we're about to move into, and this is during this year, next year, the year after, is that blue dot is going to become a green dot. And that green dot is going to have hundreds of pieces of information where your blue dot has only got 3 pieces of information.
Wow.
So that additional understanding of the spot that you're on and how that spot has changed over the last day, week, month, year, and then applying artificial intelligence on top of that to work out how it might change in the future as an understanding of the past, to get fused with other data that's available, this is going to become very powerful. So we're aware of ways that it's going to be used, but the exciting thing is the way that this is going to be used that we can't conceive is going to be really interesting. So when they put up GPS, I'm positive they weren't thinking, every stock trade that's done is going to be, time stamped. Every time someone goes to a cash machine, this is what it's about. That's not the reason it was invented. The data has just found different ways of being used. So this data set that we're involved with creating, and we're investing into the companies that lead that way, what that's going to be used for in the future, who knows? So this is effectively the creation of a new internet in space. And if you roll back 20 years when we first started the internet, no one could conceive at that point in time all of the different applications that we're going to be used. Just think about Uber, for example, how it's going to revolutionize, an entire industry of taxis just by having an online type of capability. So the same is going to happen from this data set that we're investing into. So that's the future now. Yeah. So this is happening today. New capabilities are coming into your phone that you've got no idea what they are, but they're going to help your everyday life. They're going to make you safer, more efficient, and all of that. So that's where we are today. Where we're going sort of tomorrow, the next stage is about infrastructure in space.
Okay.
As it's cheaper to get into space, it means you can put more into space.
Sure.
So that evolves around doing things like putting data centers in space, cell towers into space. So today, half the world's on 5G, half the world's on 0G.
Yeah.
Now, when we can address that balance, it's really going to make a huge difference to people in remote places accessing healthcare, education, the ability to be able to start a business. The next biggest business in the world could be done from a kid in a village in Africa,
This is
just
so
simply by being on his phone and creating something fantastic. This enables that to be able to happen. And again, this is upon us now. It's sort of a year away, 2 years away, 3 years away. So that type of activity. Then the other thing about space around manufacturing is around lifting dirty industries from planet Earth. So there's many industries that we're all aware of that just pollute the hell out of the planet.
Yeah.
We all need the products and services that they produce,
Yeah.
so we don't want to live without them. So if there's a way of lifting them into space and we can still enjoy those products or services, then that's a win. So we're focused on that. And then at the nearer term edge of that, this is revolutionizing, or has the potential to revolutionize, some really interesting industries. So biopharma.
Yeah.
So effectively drug development in space. So drugs is a great place to start in space because they're very high value, but they're very low in volume. So moving them to and from space makes sense. And in zero gravity, there is a whole, it creates a fourth dimension. Every protein, every molecule behaves differently. Every experiment actually works out differently in a zero gravity environment. So that creates a lot of opportunity for new drugs, for new types of materials. And this is the area that we're really sort of super focused on now.
Yeah.
So all the things that I just talked about there, when I'm a space investor, are all the things that are actually focused on making our life better and safer and more efficient.
And
there's
actually
all the
revolution.
other stuff. Revolution.
I mean,
revolution.
it's fascinating.
But this is all the stuff that's happening now. Then, when anyone talks to me about space, they want to talk about living on Mars and the moon.
I was going there. I'm really glad that I didn't.
About that yet.
Yeah, no, I know.
But that's really what comes next.
Yeah.
But there's just so much that I just sort of packed in. This is the reason why I took a step back.
No, I get it.
To help you understand that there's so much going on there now that even though I'm the most prolific investor in space in the world, I'm not investing into moon related activities.
But what I love is you reframed it, how this conversation almost was going to go for me, because you're actually working how to ultimately make space allow us to have a better life here.
Absolutely.
But that innovation, that entrepreneurial side of you and everything you're doing comes with risk. It comes with failure. You can't have success without failure.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the kind of journey you've been on within SpaceTech investing, and how you've chosen to embrace failure or be afraid of it, because ultimately it can slow things down, right? It doesn't sound like for a second you're sort of held back by that.
Failure is part of success, and my success is actually built on all of the things that I got wrong in the past. Understanding where I got it wrong, so I don't make that mistake again. And as a venture capitalist, we just embrace failure. So half the things that we invest into will fail. I know that before I start. So when they fail, it doesn't matter. Because the other half do really, really well and really more than make up for that failure. And that is just sort of part of everyday life. Now, one of the reasons why, in fact, Elon's story, why he came into the space industry was he wanted to buy a rocket launch, and he went to procure one, and he found it was like incredibly expensive. He was like, "How can it be so expensive? I could go and build a rocket and still have change if I did that." And they were like, "Go on then," and that's what he went and did, and that's really been a problem within the space industry. So just to sort of take a step back, the space industry, as we all know it today, is really government and communications companies. And space is really expensive. If you want to put up a satellite, it's going to cost you hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. and most of that's financed by debt. So these satellites that are being built, they last for a 10-year period. They provide a service to Earth, either to a government or to Sky or communications for when you're on a boat or what have you. But they are financed by debt. So what's happened over a period of time is that the space industry became very risk averse. Every time that they were to introduce a new piece of software or even a new bolt, it actually put a risk of the entire system being broken because of this single piece of new software or this single new bolt. So each time that they were making the decision of saying, look, there's a much better piece of technology over here, it's half the price, it's 10 times as good, should we include it? No, thank you very much, because I've got to think about the debt repayment, I've got to think about the risk of this blowing up and not enabling our system to work in space. We'll pass on that new technology. So passing on that technology for a 20-year period is what happened in the space market.
Yeah.
So when I started looking at the space market, largely because watching what Elon was doing with SpaceX and asking myself sort of what happens next. He's created a platform into space, a transport into space. But what's he transporting?
Yeah.
Well, he's transporting these satellites and all the things that we just talked about there. But they were still very in a risk-averse situation. So it became really apparent to me that the space industry was inward-looking, was not prepared to accept failure, and that was really causing them a big problem. And then if you look at all the other industries that were surrounding them, they'd been embracing new technologies that had been benefiting from Moore's law, and they'd really had these huge benefits from technology innovation that simply hadn't gone through to the space industry. So once I got that thesis in my head, it became really clear that space has got a problem because they won't accept risk. I'm a venture capitalist that thrives on and lives on risk, but manages it very carefully, and that there's a massive opportunity to move from to put it back to a sort of cell phone analogy, literally a dial-up phone that you phone up and use, to the latest iPhone handset. That's the difference between the two things that were going on in space. And it was all driven by risk appetite.
Well, no, it's fascinating. It's so interesting talking to you. There are people who are going to be watching and listening to this that are going to sort of clearly see how passionate and knowledgeable you are, and that purpose that you've got. You want to make a positive social impact. You're surrounded by innovative tech, and you're enjoying it. What advice would you give to someone looking at what you do, wanting to be involved in space tech investment and starting out in their journey? Yeah.
So it's pretty much any quotes that you get, and you read I love reading books of quotes. They're always saying, about being tenacious, being focused on what you want to achieve, and just carry on doing it until you get there. And it's simple as that.
Yeah.
You need to be thoughtful about where you're going, and just don't take no as an answer. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Nothing is easy. It's really very hard, and it all looks easy from the outside as you move from one thing to the next. But the hurdles that you have to jump, the problems that you have to overcome, you can only really do that if you're just truly tenacious.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm not the first person to say that.
No,
I won't be the last. And that for me is the secret to success.
Yeah.
It's literally be really clear about what you want to do, and then just go and do it.
Yeah. Interesting, because relating this to Mark Boggett himself, slightly away from, they're related, but in terms of what you do to keep physically fit and mentally fit, you're at the top of your game, you're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, facing forwards. Do you have that morning routine and an ice bath? And I'd love to know what you do.
I really do. And so my world is very stressful.
Sure.
Very stressful because, as I said, we embrace risk, we embrace failure. So I'm sort of dealing with failure all the time, and that's very stressful. I've sort of developed a routine. Up until the age of 40, I absolutely hated running. I think I'd probably run at school and that's about it. Run for a bus and that's about it. And I just felt when I turned 40 that I just needed to do something. I needed a sort of release. So I started running. I bought a pair of trainers. I went out for a run, and then I've run virtually every day since then.
Forrest Gump.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And only half an hour, not trying to break any records. But I recognised after about a month that it was nothing to do with the running. It was literally as I was jogging along, and each step that I took, the things that I was thinking about or subconsciously thinking about were sort of problem solving as I was going along. I was sort of in the moment. I wasn't thinking about too much, but at the same time, a lot of my problems that I had, I was getting answers to them as I was on the run. I was having to sort of stop as I was running, writing down things so that I didn't forget them when I get back. And literally, you know, it's the same every day. So I clear my head, I de-stress myself for the day. I sort out some of the problems that I've got, maybe or maybe not, and then I'm ready to start the day. And now I'm in a place where if I don't do that, then actually I feel like I've got this sort of fog over me, this cloud. And actually, I hurt my Achilles tendon 6 months ago, so I had to take 6 months off running, and I could honestly feel the huge negative impact that had on my mental frame of mind. I've only actually just got back into running again in the last couple of weeks, and it's just lifted it all up. It's amazing. So that is definitely my daily tonic that really, really works for me.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
You've mentioned success a few times.
Yeah.
And this is all hand in hand with how you live your life and how you're trying to be successful in business. But sitting here now, how do you define success?
Success is happiness and health, you know, or health and happiness, probably. You know, because when sort of health goes, you know, there's not a lot left. Money doesn't help. Health is really where it is, and enjoying the moment, enjoying where you are, you know, taking the time to, you know, recognize that your whole life is a journey.
Yes.
You're not sort of waiting to get to a point to then start enjoying yourself. So really try and build you know, the fun in along the way, and you know, I sort of live my life by sort of thinking like that, and you know, make that work. I work very hard, but at the same time, you know, I play very hard.
Yes, and I think enjoying the journey, being present, rather than having an end goal, that dare I say might be hollow when you get. I mean, in your case, it could be something quite fundamentally revolutionary, but then you'll be moving on to the next thing because it's the nature of what you do. Yeah. But again, sitting here now, what would you say to date is your greatest achievement?
I would say it was the launch of my first venture fund focused on space, because you know, it was pioneering. No one had done it before, and you know, it's been sort of bedrock of what's happened over the last 10 years, and it's enabled me to build a global brand from the UK in a high growth technology area. So. Yeah, you know, that was the biggest thing they're doing. I'll just unpack a little bit of detail there, you know, because you know, I've never worked in the space sector. I'm not a scientist or an engineer, and this is what a lot of people sort of assume when they speak to me. And I've explained the eureka moment of why, you know, we decided space was really going to be this disrupting market where there was an ability to be able to sort of get involved and start investing. But in order to get there and convince other people to give me money to do that, that was the challenge. Yeah. So you know, think about the ask. You know, I go and speak to an investor and say, you know, please give me a pile of money to go and invest in the space market. They look at me like, are you an astronaut? Are you are you a scientist?
Where's your track record?
You know, what do you know about space? So that was the challenge. So how I overcame that was that I had some help from the UK Space Agency and others, but the UK Space Agency had a key element here. I drew out a picture, like a child's drawing, of all of these different technology areas that I had been working with, and how they were going to be working and converging on the space market. And I took it to the Space Agency and said, this is my view on how technologies are going to converge on space. What do you think? And they said, yeah, this is right. And I said, I'm setting up a venture fund to invest into those technologies that are going to make these changes. They said, well, your timing's perfect because I don't know if you know, there's a big disruption about to come. I said, yeah, well, I know about that.
So you got them to buy in, basically.
So they bought in. So they said, how can we help? And I said, well, the biggest companies that are going to be disrupted are these companies that have become risk averse. And those are the ones that are pushing back on technology innovation in order to make sure that they've got sustainable satellites that don't break down and they can repay their debt. So it introduced me to them. So they introduced me to 11 CEOs of 11 of the world's largest space companies. And these are multi-billion-dollar, multinational companies, hundreds of thousands of employees, and have been focused on space for their entire existence. And I went and met the CEO in each of these businesses, and I explained that in our view, this market was going to go through disruption. They agreed. And that actually there's going to be these new companies that we're going to have innovation, they're going to have new business models, and that they should be able to see those companies, and that they should invest in those companies and acquire them as they get to a certain stage. And that in order to facilitate that, they should invest into my fund, which is exactly what they did. So 6 of the 11 of the world's largest space companies from a single meeting agreed to invest into my fund. And that's what created the world's first space-focused venture fund. So that was pretty audacious.
And it was well worth elaborating as well. I love that.
So that was my sort of biggest achievement, and we've built on since then.
I could talk to you for a lot longer. We're going to run out of time. I've got 2 more questions over.
Great.
So from an achievement point of view, what would be your ultimate achievement in terms of facing forwards to make happen?
So my big thing that I've been really focused on for many years is now in sight. And this is about harnessing the power of solar in space to create solar farms to provide clean energy to planet Earth.
Awesome.
So I've been thinking about this for a decade, and it's only really in the last year that there are companies that have been established to do it.
Okay.
So there's about 5 of them at the moment. I've looked at all 5 of those companies, decided which one's the best one, which happens to be a spin out of a team from SpaceX, and then we're now they came through our accelerator program. We've now got a stake in that business, and we're hoping for that to grow. So ultimately, for me, I think that is going to be the ultimate space success, which is about finding a new way of sustainable energy. If you think about all of the other sustainable energy resources, solar on Earth, well, it doesn't work at night time. It doesn't work when it's cloudy. Wind only works when it's windy.
Yeah, of course.
So they're not a constant power supply. And this is the reason why they're never going to enable us to be able to remove ourselves from fossil fuels. Whereas in space, the sun doesn't go away. It's always sunny. So you get 24/7 sun. And the challenge is actually bringing the energy back. One of the things that's been really interesting on this journey that I've been on to try and work with these companies is they're all using the same solution for bringing the energy back to Earth, which gives me confidence that that's the right way to do it.
Of course.
Because these guys are all over the world, and they've come at this issue from different perspectives. So that's the thing that I'm most excited about. If I can invest into a company, so I'm looking for this company to invest in. So unlike other investors, where the entrepreneur, guess what? I'm founding a solar farm that's going to bring energy, and most people are sort of like, well, what about all the problems of bringing it back and regulation and come back and speak to me when you're a bit further down the road. I'm right at the beginning of that journey, saying, right, let me introduce you to the people who will help you access the solar panels, and if you want launch, we'll arrange the launch for you. And here's some of the team that you can bring in to make sure that this is de-risked. And perhaps you shouldn't do it like that, because we failed doing that.
Well, you're
before.
well placed to
do it like this. So the companies that we're involved with, and the sort of 10 years of experience of accelerated growth in the market, we're then bringing those to companies that we really want to exist. And we want them to succeed. So that's the exciting thing I'm looking to.
We're going to have to do another program in probably only a matter of 2 years' time. How much would change? My last question. There's been films made about it, fantasies about the whole living in space. In context of sitting here now in February 2024, when is that going to be a reality?
So sooner than you think. We have invested already into a company called Voyager. There's about 4 or 5 companies that are building space stations, and this is the leading one. They have already signed an agreement with Hilton, who are helping them design their space station so that it's a fun place to go to for a holiday. This is going to be built during the course of it's being built right now, and will be in space in 2 or 3 years' time. So of course that is really only going to be open to the richest people in the world.
Yeah.
But over a period of time, as this all develops, it's going to become more and more available.
Yeah.
To everybody.
Yeah.
So this is sort of on us now. We've got during the course of this month, the US are going back to the moon for the first time since 1972.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of focus around permanent habitation on the moon. There's already $80 billion of contracts that have been signed about moon and the activities on the moon. And nothing really needs to be invented to make that happen. It's just what's happened is we're at a point in time where the costs of getting all the material up there that you need to do this have come down to a level to make the sort of business case close that you can feasibly go and do this without needing to be a nation state to finance it. This can be privately financed.
It's exciting.
And this is why it's different. So how long is it before we've got people sort of permanently on the moon? We've had permanently people in space through the International Space Station for decades. So I'm really sort of going to the moon. I think it'll be, I think we'll have people on there before the end of the decade, but and then building very quickly. I think once we sort of establish an initial habitation, that will then start to grow very quickly.
So interesting. I've loved this conversation. Maybe our next interview could be in space.
Yeah. Why not? Not.
Well, you've shared so much. Thank you. We must talk again, and thank you for talking today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Cheers.
Cheers.